Hey, hopefully you guys can hear me. Mr. Z back in. Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. Um, so what are we talking about? Um, Being priced out of life, right? Okay, so this is a kind of inspired by a the Black Authority, right? Jason Black. So this is not necessarily a reply to him. It is speaking about some of the other things and other numbers that the Black Authority did not necessarily speak about, which is that, so for the Black Authority, he said being a millionaire, right? So hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me get a comment in the comment box for the first people that get in that can hear me. Thank you very much. All right. So I'm just adjusting some stuff. Let's make sure that we can see what's going on. Okay. Um, and excuse my background. Yes, I am on the road. Okay. So let me do my intro again. Right? Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. And like I was saying, so this is not necessarily a response to the Black Authority, but it is inspired by what he was speaking about. Um I want to say the last stream that he did on his business channel, where he essentially said the new standard is $1 million. And I guess what he was saying was low six figures is not good enough if you're trying to live somewhat of an extravagant life. Maybe not if you're trying to live a standard life, but if you're trying to live an extravagant life. So I don't disagree with that, right? What I am saying is that bar infinitely going up with human beings, I do think there is a cap on human beings. I do think that there's an amount of weight that we won't be able to lift. There is a speed that we won't be able to run. There is a certain amount of not ingenuity. I do think that that can go on for some time, right? But I of course evolve into infinity. I just you're starting to talk about, like, technology and bioengineering and all that other stuff, which, by the way, you can argue we're already doing with pacemakers and some of the surgery and breast implants and all this other stuff, right? Cosmetic surgery and whatnot. So and I think we're on the cusp of, like, that type of engineering where if you have the money, you will be able to make yourself stronger by implants and whatnot, and faster. But outside of that kind of evasive, I'm not evasive, but intrusive type of surgery, that I don't really see it. If being a millionaire is the new standard, then let's go through it. From my understanding, something like 8.8, so give or take 9% of Americans are millionaires, and that's not liquid, right? That's with all their assets added, they're millionaires. Something like 56 millionaires, something like 56 million people on planet Earth are millionaires, right? So I like to do this where I say, okay, let's say whoever's calculating this miscalculated, and let's double it. So that's 120, 112 million millionaires on planet Earth, right? That's not a lot of people when you consider that the planet has some 8 billion people now, right? So, because, according to the Black Authority, the American standard has become the standard globally, which, once again, I agree with. Also, being Haitian descent, that is where America has set the bar, right? Okay, so if we're dealing with 8.8%, so 9% of people in America being millionaires, and once again, that's not liquid. That's their house, their home, their car, and everything else added up. And we're also saying that some 56 million people on planet Earth are millionaires, and even if we double it, we're still not even breaking 150 million people, right? So what are we exactly supposed to do with that when that's the bar? And the bar is continuing to go up. It's not like it's stagnant either, right? What are people supposed, if this is the standard and the standard is increasingly going up? And in the beginning of Jason's stream, being a car head, I like that he played 90s commercials for the Infiniti i30. He said it was his flag. It was the flagship. It wasn't. The Q50 was the flagship Infiniti in the 90s, and actually it remained the flagship up until the early aughts when they discontinued the Q45. I said the Q50. Excuse me. The Q45 was the flagship in the 90s. If I'm not mistaken, I think Angela Bassett's husband in Waiting to Excel, that was the car he had. That was the Q45, right? That was the flagship Infiniti at the time. He was correct about the Lexus LS being the flagship for Lexus, which, if for those of you that don't know, is Toyota's luxury division, and Infiniti is Nissan's luxury division. And the 51,000 for the LS 400, I think it was at the time. Yeah, 51,000. Now those LSs, those LS 500s are tipping the scales about 110-ish maybe. When all said and done, after you pay off everything, you're probably looking at a $150,000 car, something like that, right? So Jason Black isn't wrong about that. It's what are people supposed to do with that, right? And this is where we get into what I call like economic eugenics or financial eugenics, where we're not necessarily telling you you can't have children. We're just going to choke you out financially until you get the picture. Right? We're never going to tell you not to. This is not China. This is not dictating to you one-child policy or no children. We're just going to choke you out financially, and then you'll think you made that decision on your own, when really you had outside influences, right? Y'all go ahead, like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat, right? And that is what I say is going on, right? So unlike China, America, Europe, Canada, you know, we're not going to tell you you can't have children. For those type of people that really truly believe that the planet is overpopulated and we need to do something about that, no, we're not going to dictate to you that. First of all, that's illegal as hell, right? What we will do is choke you out. You'll get the picture, right? You will get the picture when you can no longer afford your standard family home. You will get the picture when your average car price is some $50,000 now, right? Your average new car price, right? You'll get the picture when your average or your median home price is some $400,000, something or thereabout, mid 400, maybe late 300 and something $1,000. You'll get the picture. And what does that mean for everyone else? Well, welcome back to feudalism. Everybody's afraid. You know, I live in South Florida, so the Latinos, mainly the Cubans, are deathly afraid of communism. Meanwhile, America's sleepwalking into fascism. Is it full-on fascism? No. Right? You're all worried about the social issues and the weirdos with the weird hair colors and, you know, certain sexual orientations. Everybody think that means we're gonna sleepwalk into some communist state or something like that, right? Meanwhile, financially in the country, right? Yanis Varoufakis calls it, and that's the old Greek finance minister. He was the one that was the finance minister during the housing recession back in 2008, right? He calls it techno-feudalism, right? I would argue that's pretty much where we're walking into. Are we there yet? Not really. Are we walking there slowly but surely? That would be my argument, right? But yeah, so if millionaire is the new standard for extravagant or something thereabout, I don't think Jason Black was saying that it's literally a hard million, but it's something closer to a million, right? Some hundreds of thousands, not just bare minimum 100, 120, right? And he didn't mention, you know, resting a year. You're trying to live extravagant. And Jason Black, once again, give great examples, which is if you're trying to have a large enough home, if you're trying to have, you know, the A8 Audi, which the equivalent of that would be the 7 Series Beamer, the S-Class Benz, yes, the LS Lexus. There's no longer Infiniti Q45, so they discontinued that. And big Infiniti, they're done with that anyway, because the next down was at one point the M37, which became the Q70. They discontinued that, even the long wheelbase, so that's no longer big Infinity. So if you're talking about the big Jags or any of the big luxury cars in general, yes, you're tipping the scales at over $100,000 just to walk in the door for the base model of those big luxury cars, right? We're not talking about the E-Class or the 5 Series Beamer or any of that, right? The A6 Audi, the Lexus GS, which they no longer make. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the big cars, right? So Jason is right. For you to have a appropriate size home, so we're tipping the scales at some 4 bedrooms, probably 3 bathrooms. For you to have the big luxury car, and that's just you. We're not even talking about your wife yet. If for you to have your children in private school, your children do extracurricular activities after school or whatnot. We didn't even start speaking about tutors and whatnot. I would agree with him. 120 is not that anymore, right? You have to be closer to some hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and we're just speaking about the man, right? I would agree with Jason on that. We're speaking about upwards of at least $250,000 for your not so expensive city. If we're talking about more expensive cities, then I would agree with him at closer to 300 and 400, maybe 500,000, depending on the city. Living here in South Florida, for you to provide that type of lifestyle for your children and for your wife, if you want her to be a stay-at-home mother for any real length of time, then yeah, you're looking at closer to $400,000 for you as a man, right? And that's private school, that's all of it, right? So I would agree with him on that. What I'm saying is, what does that mean for everyone else under that top 5% of people, give or take, right? What does that mean for everyone else? And it doesn't look good. And it doesn't look good. So, I mean, for all of the women, the divestors out there, shout out to you. You're getting what you want. You abort my black male babies. No, there's look, black, white, mixed, right? Latino, Asian, or otherwise. Maybe there'll be a disproportionately more Asian babies new standards, right? And white babies, but black, Latino, or any type of mixed, yeah, no, right? If this is where the bar is now, then okay, right? What does that mean for everyone? And it's not looking good, you know. And hopefully you guys can hear me. Excuse my background. Once again, I'm on the road right now, so I will be speaking with a little volume. You know, y'all like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat, like on the way in, please, and thank. And out of life, because that's essentially what we're sleepwalking into, right? And this is before we start talking Mouse Utopia project, or experiment, or you know, this is before we get even into that. If we're going strictly off of what we see here with the numbers, right? If we're going strictly here, we see the numbers for anyone. Not in large number, for any group in majority, it's not looking good, right? And so, I mean, if this is how you kind of practice financial eugenics, right? Because it doesn't look like the elite got a plan, or a portion of the elite, because the elite don't necessarily move in unison outside of, you know, hoarding wealth. They do have disagreements at the top, believe it or not. And it plays out in our everyday lives, in normal people everyday lives, right? What the elite are fighting over, their disagreements. But the portion of the elite that say that we're overpopulated and we need to lower the population and the birth rate going to crap is good, well, they're winning. They are winning, right? All across the planet, they're winning. Japan's population in the crapper. China's population, or I should say birth rate, better yet. China's birth rate in the crapper. Japan's birth rate in the crapper. South Korea's birth rate in the crapper. Most of Eastern Europe in the crapper. Western Europe in the crapper. America in the crapper. If it wasn't for immigrants, in the crapper. Even an increasing amount of countries in South America. You want to blow out one of the stereotypes that everybody have about Latinas having some how many kids in the slowly but surely more and more Latino countries in the crapper. Even India is, last time I checked, was at 2.4 child per woman birth rate, right above replacement level. Once you get to 2.1, you're at replacement. Once you dip under 2.1, you're below replacement. So in other words, they're barely making it. Right? But if the standard now for an extravagant life is $1 million, is being worth $1 million or something like that, well, let's continue to watch this. This is before we mention black. This is before we mention race. Right? Because we, as black men, we already see where more and more women, black women namely, are putting the bar. We see that. They're putting the bar where white women put the bar. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Once again, Mr. Z doesn't try to dictate to women what their standards should be. But there's a consequence to that. Okay, then. Let's watch this population go to the crapper. Let's watch us become more and more technologically advanced. And the elite be the one, because the polls already show it. Whenever they poll, you already see it's the top 20% of people that are the most interested in getting married. They're the ones that are the most interested in having families. We no longer live on a planet. And this is me kind of extending maybe what Jason Black was saying. We no longer, because there was a 60 some odd year old man that called in, and he was speaking about how, you know, the extravagant way many young people, particularly the women, are speaking. And for him, it kind of sounded insane, you could tell. But Jason Black, you know, tried to explain to him, you know, but this is the new standard. These young people are growing up in a different world than you did, than I did. And Jason Black was 100% right about that. Right? Jason Black was 100% right about that. You know, and I see I got a super chat. Give me a second. I will read that. I did not realize that earlier because, like I tell y'all all the time, I got to keep on flicking through buttons for me to see these things. Give me 1 second. I will read it when I get a chance. But yeah, Jason Black tried to explain to the man, hey, this is the new normal, kind of. Right? And so if this is the new normal, then it is what I called it. More and more people are going to be priced out. And what you see going on is the men are just dropping out. See, the women, because they've been ego stroking, placated for decades, they're not dropping out. They still have hope, is what I'm saying, in the system, right? They still have hope. They still have this concept of meritocracy. What you're finding is more and more men under that top 20%, and definitely outside of like the top quarter, the top third. Yeah, they're really just throwing their hands up. Right? If the bar is going to continue to move up, and I'm pretty much priced out anyway, right? And the entire society treats me like I'm a burden anyway. And the women look at me like if I do get some vagina, it's she's lonely and desperate, or it's some pity vagina, then why even? Right? What the Hot Soul says, Black America don't like numbers, literally can argue with some online over the population numbers, I think what you're saying, of 40 mil. They think it's much more. Shaking my head. Yeah. A lot of black people think that the government is way under, and they are undercounting. They actually admitted this, the census numbers, but it's not by no 50 million or something like that, right? 20, 30 million. It's like 5 or so million. And that's still significant, by the way. Some 5, maybe, okay, so let's say it's some 7 million. That's significant. That is significant. But it's not 15, 20, 30 million people, right? And I don't know if everyone's paying attention to their environment to even understand. I agree with you what the Hot Soul. Let's call a thing. If people have been paying attention, we don't live in the era where a hood chick has like 8 kids from 7 different dudes, from 6 different guys. That's not the world that many millennials, that was our mother's generation doing that, right? That was the boomers doing that. some of the older Xers. By the time you get to the younger Xers, that's cut out. Definitely I'm a millennial. I'm hard pressed to meet a woman, whether super hood, ghetto, or otherwise, with more than 3 children. For the most part, most women I'm coming into contact with have 2 or 3, one. Even the hood chicks that had a kid early in their life, 18, 19, 20, 21, if they had a second kid, they didn't have a second kid until their late 20s, early 30s. That's if they had a second kid, right? That doesn't mean I don't come across women with 3 kids, maybe 4 children. That's not what I'm saying. But for the most part, in my day-to-day, no. And we have to take that into account when we speak about these things. So yeah, I agree with you with the heart of soul. People are still stuck on some of these weird, backwards kind of stereotypes, even within the black community, right? Even within the black community, we keep on using these old tropes that don't apply anymore. And it's not that they don't apply anymore within the past 5 or so years. They haven't applied for like over a decade, right? Welfare queens and stuff like that. That hasn't applied for over 2 decades, but people still use it. People still use it against black women. Even some brothers use it against black women. And that's a trope that's over 2 decades old, right? The Jordans and weave thing, it's always been an over exaggeration, but it applies less and less year by year, right? People are still using the weave stereotype when we were in the middle of like the natural hair movement with women, with black women. It's like, are you that like blind? Are you that tone deaf? Like, black women are literally like letting their natural grow out and everything like that. Now they're spending more money on like hair products to keep the natural looking nice. But yeah, that whole weave thing, that's not a thing, right? We're in the middle. We're like in 2014, 2015, 2016. We're in the height of like the natural hair movement, and people are still talking about weaves. I'm like, what year are you living in? Right? Same thing with the Jordans. That doesn't mean that the young black men aren't buying Jordans, but they're not buying them the way Xers and millennials did. These Gen Z, yeah, they might buy Jordans, but it's not the same. I'm gonna pause right here, you guys. Y'all talk amongst yourselves. Give me a second. And we're back for a minute. Yeah, so yeah, so I'm listening to Jason Black speak, the Black Authority. Also on, I think this was on his business channel. He had the 3 young black girls speaking. I think the oldest was 25, the others were 18, and and this also, I mean, if y'all are advocating for polygamy being legal, then just say it. Just say it. Just say, hey, we want polygamy to be legal, and that way, those of us with some real money and we're millionaires, we could take on 3 and 4 and 5 wives. And the rest of y'all, I guess y'all create some, masturbation machine, and we will be looking like cyberpunk and y'all will have the little masturbation machine and a visual aid to get you off, and you'll be good. But the rest of us will be continuing. Those of us with the funds will be continuing our lineage with different women that we're married to or that we're in relationship with, right? Give me a second, everyone.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, and you? Oh, wow. Shout out to Trell. Trell said there were two 18-year-olds and a 25-year-old. Yeah, and Jason Black did a good job in his presentation, especially how he started with the car prices, and him going, through different homes by square feet and what their prices tend to be. I always applaud him for his presentation. Like I said, if we're really advocating for polygamy, then we just might as well say it. If we're advocating for some weird financial eugenics or Darwinism dictated by financial ability, then we might as well say it. Because yeah, I mean, we're playing it out now anyway. I mean, we might as well just make it formal and say it, as a society. And that's not a shot necessarily at Jason Black. That is saying is like, if this is the bar, just go ahead and let people know it so you could deal with the social unrest and burning down cities. I mean, if that's what we're saying, then let's watch mainly the white guys throw a fit and start, marching on your local Capitol building, right? But give me a second.
There you go. Have a good one.
Thank you. And we got our food for today. Okay. All right. So, I mean, and that's not me I'm being a bit facetious, but a lot of that, what I'm saying is like dead serious, right? Because like, this is like a life or death matter. If we're going to price people out of homes, right? If we're going to let these freaking, investors and speculators and all these different people price people out of your standard home. If we're gonna do that, then let's deal with the consequences, right? Like, let's just go all the way. Let's tell people what it is, like formally, right? No more implying it or suggesting it. Let's just outright tell people, this is the rule. We helped women up on materialism for the better part of 5 decades, and consumerism. We priced you out, and pretty much now, for you to be considered this air quotes high value man, and for you to be, just that level of provider and that level of man, you have to come to the table with some $250,000 a year. It's no longer 100. And Jason Black did actually pretty much say that. I think we need to say that to people societally, like not just Jason Black in his channel, but like just tell men that, tell white men that. Let's see what happens, right? Right? Let's just disabuse everyone of all the notion of like meritocracy now. Yeah, we are living through and for all the good and bad of them, Yvette and Tone Talks were saying this, the time of legacy, and it's when what you're getting paid for your labor is being outpaced by everything else in life, right? And what does that, because how do you even start the business? How do you even get the loan in the first place, right? And if your other family members are hard up on money, then how do you get people to crowdfund you in the first place, right? And we're watching that happen now, right? That's why they called it the K-shaped recovery coming out of COVID. Because the gap between the upper middle class and rich and everyone else in the bottom 80 grew exponentially. Right? And if we're gonna go back to feudal era, let's go all the way back. Take away voting from, because we already know like voting pretty much means nothing for the bottom 80%. You might as well take it away now anyway, right? Formally. Take away voting formally. Let's go all the way to feudal era. If we're gonna do that, let's just stop pretending with everyone, right? Because people already realize that democracy is a sham anyway. Let's make it formal, right? And then give people the weed and the coke and the crack and all the drugs to keep them like sedated. If we're gonna go there, let's go all the way there. We already gave the boys and the men the unlimited internet porn. And video games and all this other form of entertainment is cheap enough. It's a low price point, right? So let's create the sex dolls that feel and look real, bring them down, bring down the price, right? And let's just go all the way with it. And then the world is already led by the elite anyway. Well, let's just keep on going. And the bar is not $1 million. That is not what, from my understanding, Jason Black wasn't saying the bar is not $1 million, but the bar to be considered like this kind of high value man or elite or live like a more cush and comfortable life is closer to $1 million than it is to 100,000. And I would agree with him on that. But if that is the bar, then the standard bar also moved up too. What I mean by that is the bar for like normal also moved up. That means the bar for normal is not 40 grand. It's more like 80 grand. More like maybe 100,000. And like Jason Black was saying, 100,000 is more like working class now, right? Train tracks, right? Okay then, so the delineation is pretty much your bottom 90%, right? Your bottom 90% and your top 10%. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. I know I'm somewhat in a dead zone right now. Right? And so if these are the new standards for normal and average and well off, there's a consequence to that. So you will see more social unrest and strife. And by the way, this is I don't know if Jason Black mentioned this, but he did mention China and the uprising and what's going on. And he said, well, as people become prosperous and they're no longer, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, and they're no longer poor, their standards rise. But the uprisings in China aren't just because of that. It's also because they have like 40 million more men than women. Yeah, that part. So that's a whole lot of men not getting no sex, no intimacy. If that's happening in China, a one-party authoritarian state, what you think's gonna happen in America as more and more of these boys and men get into their 30s, their late 20s, their 30s, maybe even their early 40s with no intimacy? When women are willing to share the well-to-do men or at bottom the okay men, but ain't nobody trying to deal with the poor man, not even on some pity thing. I don't think this looks good in the long run. I'm just saying. Lithium 19 said, I whisper train tracks to myself now, Mr. Z. Hysterical. Thank you. Eddie Etta said, in China, no house, no wife. All right. And China put out that memo to its party years ago about what's going to happen with all these young men and the uprisings that they fear is going to happen. They did that math years ago. This is not recent. right? But if this is the new standard, fine, right? But there's a consequence to all of this. There is a consequence, right? And that's not, once again, I'm not getting at Jason Black. First of all, I don't think I can. Right? I'm just saying there is a consequence to everything that he's saying, and just watch the social, and not just in America. Right? And not just in America. If this is the new rule, if these are the rules for normal and standard and average and of course elite and well off, you got to come to the table with some millions to be considered elite, and then to be regular, you got to come to the table for normal. You got to come to the table with 80 grand a year as a man. Hey, so that means we just, before we even factor in race, we just priced out what, 70 something, 80% of men in America, right? Before we factor in race, I'm not even going to factor in race, because how many black men did we just price out? Right? Charles said, I normally don't disagree with you, but that's bullshit. A lot of these chicks have back-to-back babies in the hood, especially if they had him as a teenager. And then he says, I think it's acceptable that most people are delusional when it comes to finance and stagnation, especially when inflation rules the day. I agree with that. So, okay, this is what I'm saying. I don't know about Baltimore so much, Charles, but down here in South Florida, yes, we do have hood chicks with like four kids, maybe 5 kids. But I'm saying that's so rare now, at least down here in South Florida. And remember, in South Florida, definitely in Miami, and yeah, and well, when I say Miami, I mean Miami-Dade County. That's the whole county. And Broward County, we got some super hoods, like the gutter, like the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the bottom, right? But even with that, it's not what it was 30 years ago, right? Where that hood chick had like 7, 8 kids from different dudes, right? That's not that, at least in South Florida, that's not necessarily the world we're living in anymore, right? That doesn't mean she doesn't have 2 or 3 kids. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have 2 or 3 different baby daddies for each one of those kids. But the 6, 7, 8, 9 kids, yeah, that's not the thing anymore in South Florida, right? I don't know so much in Baltimore, right? And then even with that, the back-to-back children, what you see is a gap oftentimes, right? Between children. There's the young and dumb. So mom had you at 19, 18 straight out of high school. Because you remember, like, the teenage birth rate fell through the floor, right? That was going down in the 80s and 90s, and it fell through the floor in the early aughts. So it's in the basement now. That's not it still happens, but it's not a thing anymore. So the young and dumb, having a kid, and when I say young and dumb, I mean like you're not financially ready anyway, and you were playing around with whoever you had that child with. And so 18, 19, 20, you'll see a gap between that first child that woman had at 18, 19, 20, and then her second child, which she had at 30 years old, 28 years old, 29, 31 years old, right? That's what I see, and from my observation, at least here in South Florida, right? I don't know about everyone else. Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying that the fathers ain't different, Charles. So Charles says 68% of black women with 2 or more kids have at least 2 or more fathers. I'm not saying that second child is from the same first daddy. I'm not saying that. So I agree with you, and you're right about that, by the way, right? I'm just saying that gap, right? So, because let's be honest, she's not still with that same first guy, right? So that second baby is pretty much, yeah. That second baby is definitely from another dude. And it's not even the second dude she was dealing with after the first guy. It's probably from a 5th or 6th or 7th or 20th guy after the first guy. The guy that got her pregnant with the first baby, right? So yeah, man, like I was saying, so what Jason Black was speaking to, I can't necessarily wrong him. He's not wrong on the numbers. I'm saying there's a social ramification to this, and are we prepared to deal with it? Right? As individual Black people, as a community, as and quite frankly, being Black people in America, are you willing to deal with that? Right? Because an increasing amount of your young people say they're not looking forward to having children or being married. They don't. It's not in the realm of possibility for them. And your men are throwing their hands up. Your young men are like, yeah, no, screw it. If your young men in the West are also practicing their form of laying flat. Laying flat the Chinese kind of movement right now of young men that's saying, well, if I'm never gonna have to, if I've been priced out of having children and being married anyway, then there's no point in even trying. There's no point in even striving. So screw it. I'll just do the bare minimum, do the things that make enough to enjoy my hobbies, and that's it. I'm not living for children and a wife because I'm not gonna get one anyway. Right? And I would argue that in the Black manosphere, the men in the Black manosphere and maybe the larger manosphere, the young men that are doing that are making a conscious decision. I would argue that there are more young men in the West that are engaging in that subconsciously. Right? It's not a conscious choice. But they are engaging in that, which is pretty much throwing their hands up. They're licking their finger, putting their finger up to the wind, seeing where the wind is blowing and saying, yeah, I'm just out. Oh, Namer has a good one. He said Western Europe and North America benefited from the sex ratio disparity in China. Who else were adopting baby girls who else were adopting baby girls from China in the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s? Same thing with India. Good point. Good point. Good point. Right? And now those young men in China, female counterparts, were either, never born, or they're somewhere in, like you said, in Europe and in North America, Canada and the US. Probably in a relationship with a white man right now. I'm just saying. Right? Woo! Eddie Etta said we exported our inflation to China. Yeah. Charles says men give women purpose, women give men inspiration. There is no inspiration for men to achieve higher goals. All they have to do with maintaining themselves by a video game system, and they are content. And there you go. Right? And there you go. And I think that I truly think this is sad. Like, I'm not on this weird social Darwinism thing that a lot of people are on, especially Black. Like, when I hear Black people get, I'm not disparaging this. I just don't get it, right? And I don't subscribe to it because I know where Black people currently are, right? So, like, it sounds motivating to some people. Like, I've never been the person that was motivated by verbal abuse, right? I've never been the person that was motivated by, like, a person barking on you. Like, that's never worked for me. I'm not even, nor am I, nor do I need you to keep on blowing smoke up my rear end. I'm like your standard person where you say certain things and like, oh yeah, you're right. You know what? You're right. I need to get my things together. But like the whole like, well, shit, if you don't get no money, you ain't gonna get no women, you ain't gonna have no children, and you're gonna deserve it like that. And I would argue what you're seeing is more and more men are like, yeah, that's not motivating, right? Either work yourself to death, go start an LLC with what type of money, right? Or be prepared to be single and childless, and when you pass, that's the end of your line. That's literally what we're telling people right now. That's literally what we're telling young men right now. work yourself to death, put in crazy hours, or go start a business or become an entrepreneur with, once again, with, especially for black men, with what investment capital, I don't know. Right? Or just die alone, bro. Just die, move out the way, die, move out the way, and make space for another dude who's gonna hopefully do better than you did. And I mean, if that's the harsh reality of the situation, then so be it. I mean, there's people that feel like our population on the planet was getting too large anyway. So maybe we're overdue for a correction of population, and this is the way you do it. You choke people out financially, right? Especially in Western countries, right, that are not one party state, and it's not authoritarian, and you couldn't, dictate one child policy. And maybe industrialization, dictated that we needed a certain type of family size, or towards the end of the feudal era, we needed a certain family size, and during the beginning of industrialization, we needed a certain family size, and we no longer need that, right? In this post-industrial society, maybe we no longer need that. So maybe we don't need anyone to really be having children outside of kind of the elite kind of rulership class. Right? Y'all like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. Maybe that's the case. What's the term that they use about your average person, and definitely your people in poverty? Useless eaters. Maybe that's it. Maybe they just the social engineers just found a way to pretty much choke everyone. All the people they consider useless eaters, choke them out. Right? And if that's the case, oh well. The Western society, America, is going to have to deal with the consequences of that. Right? And including the black community in America, right? And like I said about polygamy, if the goal now is that you have to be this kind of super kick-ass man, right, just for your standard relationship, let alone if you really trying to, experience the bounty that is women more and more, and the bar just keeps on shooting up, well, and so, and just me kind of really considering what Jason was saying. And once again, shout out to the Black Authority, Jason. I think this was on his business channel, and he did a really good job with the presentation. He put things into context. Really, really good, actually. Thank you, Oliver the Great, for the super sticker. Right? Really good, actually. But like I said, there's a consequence to this, right? I'm just flicking through buttons, making sure I don't miss any of you guys' comments. All right. My apologies, y'all. I had to speak to someone real quick. So yeah, I mean, just things to think about, right? Neighbor said, I've been inspired by verbal abuse, inspired to walk away before I caught a case. Right? And like that, I I like how Jason Black presents these type of things often. But like I said, I don't think as what we're asking human beings to do and what we're demanding that men become to be considered, air quotes, real men in, right? And like a credit to your race type conversation and a credit to your society and all of this thing, right? What we're asking them to do, and the short amount of time we're demanding that they do it in, well, you're dealing with the ramifications of that, especially that you didn't necessarily socialize them in that way for the better part of 5 decades. You socialized the women on some kick-ass, you can do whatever, be whatever thing, but not so much the boys and the men. You did that for the girls and the women. Now you're demanding that the boys and the men, if they don't want to be, if they want to pass on a legacy, and they don't want their family line to end with them, then they got to be damn their Superman. You know, I don't know how that looks in the long run. I mean, we're already seeing we're seeing the beginnings of it now, right? You know, Japan is some decade plus ahead of us on this. You're seeing this in South Korea also, 0.9 birth rate, right? Japan, 1.4-ish birth rate. Western Europe, that birth rate is gone in Western Europe, and in Eastern Europe, it's in the basement, right? Even Latin America, even India, like I said, 2.4, which is a little bit over replacement level, but right. So, and then now we're adding like this kind of financial Darwinism to it on top of the Mouse Utopia project in the first place. I mean, alrighty then. And maybe this is, like I said, maybe this is what we needed, a correction. But most black people will fit into that. If you play it by the rules, air quotes, if you play it by the rules, most black people will find themselves on the wrong side of this statistic. Spain man, you see what I'm saying? And it may not be necessarily the violent purge. And Spain man says purge, by the way. It may not be the violent purge, but it will be your sons and your grandsons just throwing their hands up and saying, yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm going to go have a roommate. And if I can't afford to pay for the box occasionally with some random chick, then I'll do that. But I'm not, you know, I'm not going to have children, right? I'm not going to get married because I can't take it on. And this is where religion comes in, and religion will inspire you to get married, and then you will get divorced because religion will not keep you married. Your woman's going to look at that Bible and then look at the life that she want to live and that you're not providing, and she's going to file for divorce. Right? Thank you, Victor Creed. Victor Creed said, just saying, what's up, bro? What's going on, Vic? Charles says, I mean, what happens when I'm already laughing because I already know where this comment is going. He says, I mean, what happens when your sons and grandsons can't find, you said ill-suitable occupation because of the women have bogarted it. Oh, well, yeah. But they still want you to do the nasty, hard protection jobs. But when you don't have the inspiration, when you don't have the inspiration to do it, why put yourself out there? What's the incentive? What's the gratitude? What's the benefit? Charles, 100. I agree with Emerald on that one. Right? Let's call a thing a thing. Let me say this. Because I think people forget that men are human beings too. Watch this. Wait for it. I'm going to say the most obvious thing in the world, but nobody really considers it. Watch this. Wait for it. Wait for it. You know men want to be wanted too, right? You know men want to be desired too, right? Not just for their resources, by the way. You know men are human beings and they want to feel desired also, right? Not just like a walking wallet, and it's a very cold, hard decision by the woman that, yeah, I'll be with him because his finances are this, and he's on an upward trajectory, and yes. Right? Yeah, that's the unsexy part of the conversation. You know men are human beings and they want to be wanted too, right? I saw the look when I worked at the law office. I saw the look on some of the guys, non-black guys' faces, right? Let's call a thing a thing. The white guys' faces when they would see certain women drooling over some of the black guys and some of the Brazilian guys, right? You could see the look on their face because they never experienced that. Their relationships have been very transactional. And you could, as a matter of fact, didn't Trump kind of allude to that? Who passed away? What Congress member or senator passed away? And the wife was crying, obviously. And Trump said something like Melania would never, or so. I'm paraphrasing, but he's like you could see from what the media was saying, you could see Trump kind of envied that the wife actually had some genuine feeling, sentiment about her husband passing, outside of just the, oh crap, my money source is gone, or yeah, I'm about to get all this life insurance money, but this partner, this relationship is no longer there. And funny enough, the new LS500 just passed me. Shout out to Jason Black. Right. I know I stated the obvious right now, and it's a given, but is it really? Namer, I don't know if it was John McCain. I was thinking it was John McCain. I have to look that up because I've used that example multiple times and I can't remember who it was. I'm going to look it up so that next time I can actually give y'all the right name. Ooh, Charles. Ooh, Charles said, Charles says, let's tell the truth. A lot of men in today's society have never had been lusted after, or lusted over. Most men do not understand nor felt how it needs to be sex symbol, which is very psychologically important. Yeah. I'm sorry about that, y'all. Have to look up. Yeah. Yes. And yes, I agree with you, Charles. Some of that is on young men, right? You're looking sloppy, you got the gut out, you're not physically fit. Yeah, but some of that also is because we've allowed women to put the bar to the ceiling, right? I would like to direct y'all to the multiple online dating studies that pretty much says that women don't find any man supremely attractive. They find a small number of men attractive, and then everybody else is average or ugly, right? Namer said Trump and McCain despise each other. Of course I would despise Trump if he was making fun of me because I got captured during war and I decided to stay with my other captured military mates, right? Of course I would despise Trump. I could have decided not to join the military because my dad and my granddad, my father and my grandfather, were both part of the military during World War II. And not no little factor either. And I joined also, and I got captured. And then the draft dodger in Trump tries to make fun of me. Oh yeah. Right. Snowman said, "Oh wow, the new LS is sick, bruh." I just want, because he just turned into a complex, or she, you never know. Just turned into the complex, and I just saw it again turn out of the complex maybe 20 seconds ago, right? So I will pause right here, everyone, because I have to make a run. Thanks for listening, and once again, this is not me getting at Jason Black, the Black Authority, for his business channel. I'm just kind of expanding that out to what that looks like for the larger society when the bar for nice is closer to 1 million, and then the bar for standard also is going up and up, which I agree with him on, which is essentially what he was telling the older gentleman that called in to his show after his, the main broadcast. And hey, let's keep on, let's see where this goes. I can only make my predictions from my own limited kind of worldview, but I could be wrong, obviously. I'm not a soothsayer. Soothsayer? right? 8-ball reader. Anyway, all right, everyone. I will pause right there. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Mr. Z out. Y'all have a good rest of y'all day. Like y'all know I like to say, go check out other Black Manosphere content and go check out other non-Manosphere content related stuff so that we can know. Soothsayer. Thank you, Indigo Flow. I got it right. Thank you. Um, right. So yeah. So y'all go check out other non-Manosphere stuff so we can get an understanding of what's going on in the world and make better decisions for our lives. All right, Mr. Z out.